You never know if something's going to work or not work. You have to just be committed to workshopping it until it does work, because something inside you said it was a good idea. So it took you down that path. So see it through and figure it out. Don't be like, oh, I just give up. Like, you can never do that.
Hi, welcome back to the Badass CEO. This is your host, Mimi McLean, and today I have on Katrina Markoff, and she's the CEO and founder of Vosges Chocolate. She began her chocolatier apprenticeship in Spain under the direction of Ferran and Albert Adria of the famed Bulli, where she began to understand that food was a medium for transformative and visceral experiences. At the encouragement of Ferran, she set out on a quest directed by the signs to identify her path and reason for being in the world of good, meaningful food, and embarked on a trip around the world. During her travels, she began to see her destiny as an alchemist, sharing in the long tradition of those who believe that creation is great work, and when ingredients are combined in just the right way, they become greater than the sum of their parts. Katrina has used her vibrant cacao as the medium of her chocolate collections in the last 20 years. She's made it a part of her mission to use only superior sorts of ingredients for all of Vosges' products as an acknowledgement of her nature's secret and potent bounty that she has the honor and responsibility to reveal. Katrina, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to talk to you about two of my favorite things, chocolate and all the great superfoods and things that you add to it to make it even extra special. So thank you for coming on. And I would love to just start out by just talking about your story and your apprentice that you started to figure out exactly what you wanted to do with your company.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the origin story kind of started with me I went to Vanderbilt, and I didn't love my degrees. I moved to Paris, went to the Cordon Bleu. And then I decided I really wanted to learn more about other cultures' cuisine outside of just France. And so I moved to Spain and I got the opportunity to work at El Bulli. And that was the beginning of like molecular gastronomy. But the way I saw that work was really like experiential food. And I think it just had it had a tremendous impact on me in regards to like food is so much more than taste. And I think from there, I ended up going east for the next 9 months throughout Southeast Asia and Australia and China and Korea, and just kind of like worked in different restaurants and really learned about culture through food and markets, and seeing how food was much more than just about, again, taste. But in the East, I found it to be more about ritual and healing. That was really unique to me. So like certain foods pressed on your skin, or roots pressed on your skin, or taken in internally, or like that were food, but were used in a way for purpose. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And I think, as I traveled, I sort of gathered all these little interesting nuggets of information that kind of fed into ultimately creating Vosges.
Yeah, that's good. Because I don't feel like the, United States, they don't really believe there's not that connection of food and like medicine and your body, and you're using it to nurture it. I mean, we all have the standard American diet, which is sad. Mm-hmm. And so like the Hippocrates quote, like let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Right. And that's where you should be turning to and figuring it out. So that's why I love your company, because you're kind of doing that, but with something that we all love. Okay. So you went and you did that, you did your internship, but then when you came back and you realized you did not want to work in like the restaurant industry, and that's when you kind of said, like, let me do a twist on what I already learned.
Right. I wasn't meant really for the kitchen. It wasn't like my space. And I started to look into food, like what food items sold. And this was 21, 22 years ago. And at the time, like the chocolates that you could buy to eat were mostly like at drugstores. There were very few like really nice specialty stores around. Dean and DeLuca, I suppose, was it, and maybe Eat Seeds at the time. And you just couldn't get great chocolate. And you also, if you got gift box chocolates, always it was filled with preservatives, potassium sorbate or whatever to preserve it. And so I was like, God, there is like nothing here that I would ever want to eat. And though I never really loved chocolate as a kid, and I hadn't even really worked with chocolate, I just thought it was just a huge opportunity, because as I started researching cacao, the fruit that makes the chocolate, it was sacred, sacred plant medicine. I was like, whoa, are you kidding? It's so fascinating to me. And now it's like this childlike confectionery sweet, but it came from these very serious, cool roots of like healing and bringing you into your heart space and making you feel like you're in love. And like, I was just like, oh my God, this is the food I have to work with. This is it. And so I kind of brought in all this conglomeration of all these moments of epiphanies as I traveled that kind of made sense now into a brand that like I was going to use chocolate as a medium for storytelling about these different cultures, but through a very luxury positioning lens, but with a deep soul. And that was not really typical. You know, when you thought about luxury, it was more indulgent, but I never thought about it as having a soul. But when you bring in like those human stories about the way different cultures use the food, it creates that natural soul of a brand. And it just started to feel more and more and more right as like a platform for not just, you know, a business, but really for creating this opportunity to open people's minds up to new ideas through food energetics, through storytelling, through just well-crafted chocolates.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I just started to think about the brand as a woman, and I made a name. Her name was Sophie, and she became the personification of the brand. So whenever I went to look at like what would the brand do next, I would think about, okay, this muse Sophie, where does she shop? What does she read? What does she care about? Where does she travel? And it became to be like the ultimate voice of the brand. And, you know, there's so many stories about it, how this brand was developed. But in the beginning, I think that was a super crucial part because I think it's a very deep brand. And some people don't go that deep with it, you know. But the point is that it is like a soulful brand in a luxury positioning. And I think that's really interesting because it doesn't necessarily go together always. And then as I look into the ingredients we use with chocolate, they don't always go together with chocolate either, as you would typically think, you know. Olive oil and chocolate, or paprika and chocolate, or, you know, Taleggio cheese and chocolate. These things sound, you know, at the time when I did it, especially, they sounded very disgusting to a lot of people. And that was the tension that was really interesting about it, because chocolate is a magnetizing food and everybody likes it. And then when you say like, but it has this in it, or it's about this culture, they're like, what? Oh, but I love chocolate. Okay, I'll try. And sort of that moment of tension is really interesting because you become very present and the mind is much quieter. So that was another kind of thing that I saw in like what we were doing is like people did get very like viscerally present into their body as opposed to just like popping in something sweet.
That's awesome. So when you created your first chocolate and your brand, where did you turn to first to sell it? Like, how did you distribute it?
I had looked at the way fashion brands had built brands off of couture originally and runway. And then they had distribution though of makeup and sunglasses in large department stores without diluting their brand. And I thought that was a really interesting model. So what was going to be the sunglass part of our brand and what was going to be the couture? And so it was very clear that the truffles would be the couture side because they were going to be made with fresh cream. So they could only be shipped direct to consumer. We couldn't sell them anywhere else because they only last for 2 weeks. But the chocolate bars could have a lot longer shelf life naturally because it's just, you know, chocolate is solid and has very low water, so it can last for a long time on the shelf. So I thought that's really an interesting model. So in the beginning, that's really how I, you know, set up the channels. And, you know, it was kind of omni-channel from the very beginning. So Whole Foods and, you know, Dean and DeLuca and, you know, your specialty food stores became basically wherever they sold really good cheese would be a place we could sell chocolate bars. We weren't the center aisle thing. So like when I say Whole Foods, I don't mean in the middle of the store. I mean in the cheese department, which they call it specialty. So that's really kind of how it was, direct to consumer through e-commerce. And then, you know, the wholesale business was built through kind of specialty cheese shops, you know, and then of course we had, you know, developed another brand ultimately and built a bigger factory and created more volume for like more of a corporate gifting perspective of the channel.
No, that is true. It's everyone's always looking for a unique and special gift. Was it hard to get into the main, like a Whole Foods and bigger brands, specialty stores?
You know, we were lucky that we had really great press. And, you know, back in the day, media based in New York, print, that was really how, you know, you could get your name out without spending a ton of money. And because it was such a unique concept and I had a background that was like had some credibility, I guess, because I worked in, at El Bulli and went to the Cordon Bleu, like the media was willing to cover the story, but it sounded really gross to everybody at the time, wasabi and chocolate and everything. But I think that was, again, like that tension helped pull like their attention. And then we got a lot of press, and it was really the press that helped build the awareness and I think give the confidence to the retailer that like this was a legitimate, cool new trend.
Mm-hmm. Looking back over the past 20 years, what would you say has been your hardest lesson that you've had to learn?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There have been so many, but I would say always being really present in your, like, I'm going to call it awareness or your intuition, because I got to the point where the company was just growing really, really fast, and it got bigger, and I started to get like insecure, like, I don't know what I'm doing, like what do I know about this? I'm just like an entrepreneur that just can figure stuff out, but like I don't know how to run like a big business and hire. And then I'd get all this advice like, well, just hire amazing people. Well, that's not really that easy to do. Like, it's one thing to spend a lot of money on someone, and it doesn't mean that they're like a great hire. And so I think I was just not really listening. I wasn't checking in with my own gut. And I was just kind of like, oh yeah, you guys know better. You're more experienced. You come from a big company. You would know. And that was like too far off the reins. You have to have a balance of your perspective and someone else's perspective who thinks it's, they're an expert. So I would say like, always checking in and with yourself and like, does this feel right? Is it like, really look beyond kind of the shine of other people's opinion and their, sort of background, and like, does it feel right? And then weigh in on that. But I hired a lot of people like, they'll get it done. They'll figure it out. And didn't always go like that.
Because they don't have your vision, right? Like what you're trying to do, and you're disrupting something that's there. They're trying to do what's already been there. Right. So they're not seeing what you really want to do with the company and the direction it's taking.
And also, like, a lot of times when you hire people that are like more senior in their role or come from a big company, they're used to having huge teams to delegate to. So they're not used to actually doing the work themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just, so I like, you really need people, I would say like really hire for heart, because usually when you have someone who's got their heart in it, they're willing to work hard. Mm-hmm. Like they're willing to just figure out whatever it is that needs to be done. And I've been doing this a long time, and the reality is there's always an issue. There's always an opportunity. I mean, it just is every single day. So you got to kind of like work through that, have faith through that, be coming up with plan B and C through that, all the things. And a lot of times people with a lot of heart are used to like being able to solve problems with their will in a way, because their heart's in it. As opposed to being like, you know what, I'm not paid to do this. This isn't my job.
Yeah, exactly.
You just can't have on a team. And especially when you're building like, a smaller company and don't have like endless resources to just hire a bunch of people to do,
Right. To be a lot more resourceful. And yeah, that's so true. Speaking of resources, how did you fund the company completely on your own, if you've had to go out and look for outside investors, and talk about that process?
Yes, it was all self-funded up until like the 15th year. And then we took growth capital from friends and family investors. And, I'm a big fan of just slow growth. If I didn't have to take investment money, I would have just kept kind of going slower, but I felt I had to. And I was trying to grow another brand also, Waldophilia. A lot of the glamour stories, in the investment world is like just grow fast and like, have a huge transaction, big multiple. But in building a luxury brand, I think something like that, it's a multi-generational view for me on like how to build a brand that has staying power. And that's, not necessarily the most popular path, but I think it really does speak to like the brand's longevity when you can have a brand that's been, is around a long time, like we have, and obviously, want to be around for another couple hundred years at least, right? But so you have to make those different kinds of decisions in growing a brand like that.
Yeah. Because there's so many different ways. I mean, you can go raise capital, but that comes with like, that's a full-time job going to look for investors. Yes. And then two, with that comes a lot more responsibility as far as like, being an angel investor myself, you're as a CEO are not really required to give me, weekly, monthly, quarterly checkups, financial, you're kind of on your own. Like, as far as like, I'm not bugging you to be like, okay, give me. Whereas if you have outside investors that are bigger, like private equity, VC, they're expecting, financial statements and updates. And it's just a whole other level of commitment and time that maybe that distracts you from your actual core business.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a huge, piece of it. And, so if you can do it on your own and just have a really strong value set, I think it's a good multi-generational type role, but it's not the most popular. I mean, I wonder how many people that you talk to really have that kind of approach. Or
I think it depends on what your end goal is, like, right? Like, there's people who start a company and they're like, okay, in 5 to 7 years, I want to sell, especially food or beverage. Like, they're in it to be able to just sell it for a couple $100 million to a bigger conglomerate and get out. And then there are some people that I have spoken with, other CEOs that are like, no, I want this to be my baby and I'm not going to sell it. So I think it's like, what's your end game and what you're trying to do with it? Like, if you're trying to grow it and sell it, or you rather just keep it as your business that you're going to grow and, like you said, generationally and pass it on.
I mean, more, and it's not even about like, yes, maybe pass it on. But for me, it's just like a brand that has really great staying power. And I think to do that, you have to iterate on a product like this so much to make it really refined. It looks simple from the outside, but it's a lot of little tweaks to everything and tests, and to just create a great product that like evolves over time, because products always need to evolve. There's no perfect recipe in my mind. You're always going to find a better source or a cleaner item, or, something with, a better story. Like, there's always reasons to kind of continue to evolve that. And it takes a while to embed that in a culture.
But I think with your specialty item, it's also hard. Like, even if you wanted to sell, it's like, what conglomerate would do your brand justice? Like, they're not going to want to spend the time and energy to perfect it the way you do, right? They're going to want to mass produce it to increase their margins.
Yeah. I mean, so like with our products, so we have like the mainstay truffle collections that have been from the very beginning, and they're the best sellers. And those are, not to say that I don't always kind of do little adjustments, but they're pretty solid. But the innovation piece is what's really, I think, important to keep consumers interested, because people have the need for new a lot. And we operate very much like a fashion house, in that we have new packaging, new recipes for every season, which is Valentine's Day, spring, and then really holiday. So that kind of feeds that one half of our customer base, which is all about the experience and new and innovation. And the other one is really like the person who wants to give like a tried and true luxury gift, and like they just want to get like the everyday assortment. And so those are, pretty well locked in their format. But for the innovation, like, you need basically an artist to create that storytelling for the brand.
Is there anything that you look back on and you're like, oh, I wish I knew this before I started?
I mean, sure. Like, I tried to do ice cream for a little bit, and we were really ahead of the ice cream pints, for $12, $15. But it was really a completely new supply chain, and like need a huge amount of investment dollars to ship frozen. You have to find very special trucks that hold negative 20-degree temperatures, which are rare. And then you can't really do LTL like on those. So you have to do like a full truck. And if you don't, you're just wrapping dollar bills around it. And when we started, we found a dairy doing it in the East Coast, but all the demand was from the West Coast. And it was just like, oh my gosh, after spending like $500,000 on that, I'm like, this business needs way more than that to like really get it going. So I would say, like, if you're going to do a second brand or another like big product line, like, it does require a lot of resources, and you can't just lean on your existing team, because they are doing a lot with your current business. So
you're just distracting, and then you'll lose kind of the eye on the ball of the other mainstay. business. So it's interesting. I don't know if you know the stats, but it was like, I don't even know what percentage, but very few percentage of companies make it past 5 years, right? And only for women, only 1.7% of women ever reach $1 million in sales in their businesses.
Oh my gosh.
Which is so crazy low. So obviously you've done well and you've lasted more than those stats as far as timing and dollar amount. So what would you say was your secret, or what can you pass on advice to other women who may be deciding, should I keep going? Should I not keep going? Any kind of advice on what could have made you be one of the 1.7%?
I mean, you have to believe in your goals. You have to write your goals in, all categories of your life, and you have to deeply feel it. So like if you're starting to like doubt, you need to like go get a refresh at the spa or something and reinvigorate yourself with the brand, because you're the energy that really drives it out. And if you're not in a good place, like it's hard for your brand to be in a good place. So I would say like keeping that energy inside yourself for what you're doing high, and then like being smart about like putting together your plan. Like, okay, I'm going to reach out to this many people. I'm going to make a connection with everybody I meet today, because when you give energy to other people, I don't care if it's the person working at the, drugstore or whatever, the lady that's helping you with your house, like whatever, like when you give it, it comes back, and that gets you out of your head. I do really think a lot of this is a mental game, and women can sometimes, I've read, like be more risk adverse when it comes to debt. I don't know if that's true, but I've read that. And like, I don't have issues with having debt and taking a big chance in a flyer. And like, you have to kind of do those things. And when you do the flyers, because I do it almost, all the time, because we're always innovating and you never know if something's going to work or not work. You have to just be committed to workshopping it until it does work, because something inside you said it was a good idea. So it took you down that path. So see it through and figure it out. Don't be like, oh, I just give up. Like you can never do that. You screw up, fix it. Like that's just what you do. You cannot doubt yourself. Like there's a reason it took you here. So just keep following, growing it, learning from it, because you're going to make a mistake all the time. It's just about like learning from it and moving on. Like make a mistake, learn, and like keep going. So, I think that's what like we do a lot, is just try to be smart about learning from all the mistakes that we make.
And maybe they're not even mistakes. It's just learning to be adaptable, right? Like I think a lot of times women, when they start a company, they tend to feel like everything has to be perfect. Like when I launch, my website's got to be perfect. The font's got to be perfect. The product's, and instead, like you really don't know what your customer wants, right? So by launching, you're listening. You're going to launch and listen and learn and adapt.
Well, and the thing is, like, I remember I could show you the first box I ever did for Vosges, and it is a total embarrassment. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I ever did that. But somehow some people liked it. Like, it was like, there was enough grace in there that people like wanted to support. I don't know, like the product was really good, even though the packaging wasn't at the time, but you just get better. But you can't, like, I always say, whenever I launch something, it's probably like a 75 or 80% out of 100. Like it's never perfect. But if I don't launch it, it will never exist, because something else will happen and there'll be another reason, and I can't buy the thing because for whatever whatever. So I like really push hard to launch, because I know once it exists, it can grow. But if you just fuss with it too much, you'll never get it out. And it's also just a stifling process to be like, it's just not right. I'm like, it's good enough for right now. We're going, let's go. And next time I'm going to tweak it and tweak it and tweak. But I just can't get hung up on being a perfectionist, even though I am one. I look at perfectionism over like a 5-year span almost. Like, I'll just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking.
Because what's perfect? Like, how do you know what your perfect is actually the right perfect, right? And so like you look at how many brands have changed their logos or changed their packaging. Like it's just inevitable. Like you're going to change. You're going to change your time. Like that's why hairstyles change over 10 years, right? So we're not going to wear the same hairstyle we wore 20 years ago. So of course, everything adapts and changes to what's going on. So I think that is definitely one of the biggest hangups women have launching, because they feel like they have to have everything perfect because everyone's watching and everyone's looking and it doesn't have to be, because you have to be willing to adapt and listen.
Absolutely. It's all about that. I have a friend that like spent all this money on like doing this huge ad in New York in Times Square, like this huge thing. And then like, she's like, you know what? I really don't like my brand name. And then she changed it. I was like, what? After that. But it's like, you just constantly adapt. If it's better, go over there and don't be ashamed that you made a bad choice. Like,
So she did change her brand name after?
yeah, she did. Maybe she got feedback from that. Maybe I don't get the details, but maybe she got really good feedback that no one knew how to pronounce those letters together.
Yeah.
So she changed it, but the concept was good, but just the name wasn't resonating. And so what? Okay. It was an expensive mistake, but change it.
Yeah, no, totally.
Just can't be afraid of change. That is the biggest thing. It's like some people get like so tied up in their ego with like, this is perfect and I shouldn't have to change. No, you always have to be humble enough to be looking at something like, how could it be better? I'm constantly looking at how could this be better? And the little things, they bug me for a while, but then when I get the opportunity to change it, because we ran out of the packaging, so we now have an opportunity to update, I will. But I'm in a constant state of change. That must be like, I'm also very like, I love change. Like it's almost like stimulating me. Change. It's like really a powerful energy for me. I don't mind when a meeting cancels. I don't mind when a trip cancels. Like, it's like, oh, it's exciting. What's next?
Yeah, totally. I'm always the same way. Like my husband's like, you're so fickle. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, you have one life. Let's just, like I can't imagine living the same thing for my whole life. Like that's why I move all the time. I love meeting people.
Oh, do you move all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I would love that. I would love to do that too.
Yeah, I'm sure my kids don't like it. Literally, we move I don't think we've lived in a house more than 2 years.
Oh my God.
Awesome. I look back and I'm like, wait, that's so much energy to move and unpack and pack. Like that part of it, I'm not psyched about. Like I haven't mastered that. Like so much attention is to that, but I do like moving and experiencing different things all the time. Like I think college, I look back, if I were to have a college should be only 1 year and then you should move to a different school. Like it shouldn't be 4 years at one school. Like that's where you should be like, right? I mean, that's where you should be meeting people and learning experiences and figuring out what you want to do with your life and where you want to live. And right. It shouldn't be like 4 years at one school. I don't know. It should be more like different experiences. I'm always like that. But
where are you living now?
We just moved from LA to Connecticut.
Oh, right. Oh.
And have you ever had your numbers read?
Yeah.
So I had my numbers read once and the woman's like, I think it was like all fives. She's like, that means you should be always moving. Like, she's like, and you have 5 kids? She's like, that's not your numbers. You should have been like a travel writer and you're never home with a family. Like that's who you should be. And I'm like, that's funny because that's probably why I always feel like I need to be moving and traveling and doing things.
You have 5 kids? Did you say?
Mm-hmm.
And you're moving every 2 years? That's incredible.
Yeah, well, I like it.
Oh my God.
I also like organizing and throwing stuff out. I don't like having a lot of...
Me too. I just hired someone to come to my house to just like, I'm like, just do the basement. And now I have her come every single week.
And what does she organize?
She organized. So they go through whatever the room and they'll say, you know what? Your kids are these ages. They don't need these things anymore. Here's a pile. Go through it. And then like when she's standing, I'm like, okay, I'll just donate this stuff. I'll donate this. And it feels so good. I'm like, this is like retail therapy. I feel like I just lost like 20 pounds and got a new dress because you're like shedding so much of the stuff that you're like, kind of weighs a lot,
Yeah, no, it definitely does. No, I just interviewed a couple weeks ago, the Home Edit girls. I don't know if you know the Home Edit.
No.
They have a TV show now on Netflix. I interviewed them and they were just bought by Reese Witherspoon's company last week. They just announced it. So they have a great brand too called the Home Edit, and they go in and you would love it because they make it very visual. It's not just about organizing. It's like everything they do is just beautiful, colored and visual. And they were the first ones who kind of started doing it on Instagram, like the before and after. And so they kind of took that whole Instagram trend and that's how they became pretty big.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. Honestly, it's like I feel like it's the greatest thing ever. I mean, I don't know how much they charge for a service or whatever, but it is so worth it to me.
I know.
Like I want everything like to be so pretty. Like I can show you my pantry. Like it's okay, but it could be better. Like I'm always, okay, it could be better. Because you want to be inspired when you look around.
Yeah.
At your house.
No, it's true. It's true.
I mean, that's how my office is too. Like, I have visual boards all over because it's like whatever I'm working on, I want to kind of be reminded of like, why did I pick that? And I just like kind of say like, this feels good. I'm going to take this. This is like an energy that I want around me, and then I'll change it out. But it's nice to, like be in constant creation. I think like that's what life is about. You're always creating something.
Exactly. Well, Katrina, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. And so anybody who wants to try her delicious chocolate, you go to VOSGES and then chocolate.com. And you can see all her great treats and also packaging for gifts and everything or for yourself. But thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was great being with you.